From The Times and The Sunday Times, this is The Story. I'm Luke Jones.
Is it anyone's first concert today? It's your first concert? No way, how old are you?
At a sold-out Pink Panthers gig in Brooklyn, New York last month, stay with me, there was the usual crowd excitement. Pink Panthers is quite the Gen Z favourite. But when the audience camera up on the big screen landed on one face in particular, the crowd went mad. For a politician, the man who is absolutely odds-on favourite to be elected mayor of New York City tomorrow.
The name is Mamdani. M-A-M-D-A-N-I. The name is Mamdani.
He's 34, a TikTok sensation, a self-described Democratic Socialist. Some of the Democratic Party are unsure about him, and President Donald Trump certainly is.
No, I don't like to see a communist become mayor, I will tell you that. I'd prefer not to have a communist mayor of New York City. And, that's what he is based on his policy, if you look at his statements in the past.
So who is Zohran Mamdani? Is he all vibes, or a man with an actual workable plan? The story today, the millennial mayor who wants to remake New York.
New York City is the most populous city in America, 8 million people. It's the center of Wall Street. It is a beacon in America for what an urban city can be and also might fail to do. So how New York succeeds or fails, you could argue, is sort of very important politically for the United States.
Will Pavia is New York correspondent for The Times, usually here on the podcast explaining some outrageous court case to us. He has been in the city since 2010. He has met many a New York City mayor and has been all over this latest race to be the next one.
It has been quite eventful, and there's been a lot of surprises. People in my building have caught some election fever. I live in a small building on the Upper East Side. There's quite a lot of young people live in it, and it seems like all of them are voting for Mamdani. I remember just after Mamdani won the primary, talking to a very centrist, Democrat-leaning financier, and he sort of said he was really unsure of what to think. And he said, I went to my favorite restaurant, this very nice Italian restaurant in the West Village. And he said, and I was sitting there rather glumly, but of course, all the waitresses were absolutely cock-a-hoop. And I always think of that. It's slightly like...
That's the divide.
Yeah, that's slightly the divide. And so young people are very excited about Mamdani. I think it has become a live issue in New York City, and a lot more interesting than a lot of mayoral elections that I've seen.
So who are the, let's say the three main candidates?
The Democrat nominee is Zohran Mamdani. He is a young man of 34. He's Muslim. He's a state assemblyman. And he's had the most extraordinary rise in politics just by running for mayor. So that's him. We have Andrew Cuomo, who was assumed to be the Democratic nominee when he first got into the race. He is the former three-term governor of New York State. He resigned in 2021 over allegations of sexual harassment, and this was supposed to be his comeback story. He is now running as an independent, hoping to try and hoover up some of the Republican votes in New York. And then we have Curtis Sliwa, who is the founder of the Guardian Angels, a long-time sort of prominent New Yorker radio host, runs on the Republican ticket sort of every year almost, and is, I would guess, a sort of rank outsider in this.
Yes, because it's a Democrat city, isn't it? And the incumbent, Eric Adams, where he?
Eric Adams took office in 2021. He was indicted by a federal prosecutor on corruption charges. Then President Trump was elected, and he signaled to the White House that he was willing to cooperate with them on their sort of attempts to sweep up migrants in the city. And as that cooperation seemed to go on, the Justice Department had the case against him dismissed. And this so infuriated the Democratic base, that the sort of sense of a quid pro quo, that the party turned against him. He was terrifically unpopular, and he dropped out of the race eventually and has endorsed Cuomo.
So messy, American politics, isn't it? So essentially, I guess the race is between Andrew Cuomo and Zohran Mamdani, a former Democratic New York governor, and the man who beat him to the Democratic nomination this time. They've, of course, had lots of events where they've been slagging each other off and the rest, but we have had debates, one recently towards the end of October. How spicy would you say it's been?
It's got spicier. I think the problem for Cuomo has been that Mamdani seems like a very assured political operator, and he's very good on the stage, and he seems very calm.
Good evening. Thank you to the moderators, and thank you to New Yorkers for tuning in. I know you'd rather be watching the Knicks.
And Cuomo's hope was to be the sort of voice of experience who knew how to run things in New York, which is not easy to do.
Yeah, the difference on this question is I've actually lived it, and I've done it with President Trump over many years through the most difficult situation that this country has gone through, COVID plus.
And Mamdani has just been a very sort of smooth operator on stage. And so I think Cuomo has tried to sort of suggest that Mamdani wouldn't be able to stand up to Donald Trump. And he sort of tried to suggest that Mamdani is far too inexperienced for the role.
He has said he'll take over New York if Mamdani wins, and he will, because he has no respect for him. He thinks he's a kid and he's going to knock him on his tuchus.
And Mamdani has sort of shot back, sort of saying that Cuomo has this record of governor defunding New York's subway system, and, you know, not building affordable housing in New York.
And then we heard from Donald Trump's puppet himself, Andrew Cuomo. You could turn on TV any day of the week, and you will hear Donald Trump share that his pick for mayor is Andrew Cuomo. Not because it will be good for New Yorkers, but because it will be good for him.
That's sort of been the flavour of the debates.
And also there's been some vitriol, there's been some disparaging play on Mamdani's ethnicity, his religion.
Yes. I mean, this came in an interview that Cuomo did.
Every given morning, there's a crisis, and people's lives are at stake. God forbid another 9/11. Can you imagine Mamdani in the seat?
And the interviewer sort of suggested that Mamdani would somehow be celebrating if it happened again.
Yeah, I could. He'd be cheering.
Well, it's another problem. But can you imagine that?
So Mamdani has talked about 9/11. He's talked about the discrimination that his aunt suffered in New York City afterwards. So there has been some of that. And I suppose, obviously, Israel has been like a really hot button issue too in this city, which is, you know, has a huge Jewish population. Mamdani has been someone who's talked a lot about sort of the plight of the Palestinians, and he's refused to sort of say that he believes that Israel should exist as a Jewish state. And those are sort of, you know, quite controversial stands in a city that has, I think, the largest Jewish population outside Israel.
But I don't want people to leave this thinking that it's a kind of toss-up between the two of them. I mean, it is quite clear that Mamdani is going to win. He's the runaway favourite. Is that fair? I mean, how much so?
That is right. I mean, he's polling at 47%. He's far out in front. He polls very well with almost all age groups. And these policies that he wants to implement are also poll very well. So it does seem as if, you know, you would assume that he's going to be the next mayor.
And what is his policy platform? What is he promising?
He is a socialist Democrat, and socialist you always think is going to be a bit of a sort of difficult label in America, but he very proudly says that he is, and his campaign has been all about affordable living, making the city affordable for New Yorkers.
Every politician says New York is the greatest city on the globe. But what good is that if no one can afford to live here?
Build more housing, a rent freeze. He wants to make the buses free.
The slowest buses in the nation are robbing us of our time and our sanity. Working people are being pushed out of the city they built.
He's also promised free childcare. So at the moment you have nursery schooling, pre-kindergarten nursery schooling, which Bill de Blasio managed to get done. He wants to make it, I think it's from something like 6 weeks, free childcare, which would be an extraordinary thing if he could achieve it.
We can do all of that and so much more, because this is New York. We can afford to dream.
And he wants to fund some of these pledges by raising taxes on corporations and with a 2% flat tax on people earning more than $1 million a year.
And the banner all of this comes under, it seems, is affordability. He's always talking about affordability. You are, I guess, technically a New Yorker, Will. I mean, has the city just got so unaffordable for people that if you're promising to make it possible to live there more cheaply, that's a winner, no matter what you call yourself?
Yes, and it's been the case for a long time. It's just gradually got more and more expensive to live here. The rent has just gradually crept up. There used to be a candidate on New York City elections. His platform was called "The Rent is Too Damn High." He was a constant sort of fixture. I mean, he was sort of a character. And it was just one of those like single issue kind of messages. Mamdani kind of famously, at the very beginning of his campaign, he went out and did a video where he spoke to people who'd voted for Trump.
Did you get a chance to vote on Tuesday?
Yes!
And who did you vote for?
Trump!
The $1 million question. Trump.
Trump. Donald Trump. Well, actually, early voted. I voted for Trump.
And kind of asked them why. And the cost of living was their reason.
The swing is because people want lower prices. They probably believe that Trump would give them that.
Market price, all energy, gas.
La comida. Food.
Most of these people are working families. They're working 1 to 2, 3 jobs, and rent is expensive. Foods are going up.
And so that's very much sort of shaped his campaign ever since.
And what is his background? What do we know about him? Where did he come from?
So he was born in Uganda and lived there until the age of about 5. He is the son of a Ugandan academic, Mahmoud Mamdani, who specializes in colonial and post-colonial history. His mother is Mira Nair, who's a filmmaker, quite well respected and well regarded and famous. And so when they were 5, they moved first briefly to South Africa and then to New York City, where his father got a job at Columbia. And he grew up on the Upper West Side. He played actually in the same soccer league that my children all play in. Sorry, this is probably too much detail.
No. But I was going to say not to labour your kids posh, but it sounds like quite a posh upbringing that he enjoyed, and maybe your kids are enjoying as well.
So I would say yes. He went to a private school initially, Bank Street. I would just very briefly, this is not relevant, but I would defend the soccer league. It's a volunteer-run soccer league that's very affordable compared to all the other ones. But and then he went to a public high school where he actually founded a soccer team and a cricket team. So he's got a slightly interesting sort of take on on sports for an American, which he only became in 2018. He became a citizen. So, you know, all of that background is quite interesting for a mayoral candidate. He's also a rapper for a while. He made a track that featured an actress in one of his mother's films. He performed under the title Mr. Cardamom. So he has this slightly colourful sort of young New Yorker history.
And what about politics? How on earth did he get involved with that?
He worked as a foreclosure prevention counsellor, which I suppose fits with his sort of, you know, for people who are trying to avoid eviction. I think he volunteered for Obama. But the thing that really inspired him was Bernie Sanders' campaign in 2016.
Hi, I'm Bernie Sanders. I'm running for president. And I'm asking you today to be part of an unprecedented grassroots campaign of 1 million active volunteers in every state in our country.
And Bernie Sanders, the sort of quite far left Vermont senator, old bloke.
Yes, exactly. The socialist mayor of Burlington, who then became a congressman and then a senator, who, you know, kind of stunned everybody by having this sort of campaigning as a socialist in the Democratic primary and very nearly beating Hillary Clinton.
Our campaign is about transforming our country and creating a government based on the principles of economic, social, racial, and environmental justice.
Anyway, Mamdani was inspired by this, and he became a state assemblyman in 2021, still very young, clearly, and he lives in a small apartment in Queens with his now wife, who is an American. She was born in Texas, but she lived part of her life in Dubai, and she's of Syrian heritage.
And I, of course, had not heard of him before this race. When did he first come on the radar of New Yorkers generally, would you say? Because he must have been quite an outsider when he threw his hat in the ring for the Democratic primary for mayor.
His name recognition initially was something like 1%. Nobody thought that he had even a cat's chance of winning. But he's incredibly good on social media, and he ran around New York City making these videos. He went on this sort of online show, Subway Takes, and that kind of went viral.
So what's your take?
I should be the mayor.
What are you going to do about the price of matcha lattes?
100% not sure.
I mean, they're $9. Dude.
I only want to make
this is you can win this campaign easily if you lower the cost of matcha lattes.
I can only make the promises I can keep.
He suddenly became the subject of all these memes, which obviously helped him even more. So he sort of became the cool, New York candidate. And there was people wandering around with T-shirts that said "Hot Girls for Mamdani." He had this very kind of compelling branding, this sort of orange and blue swirly writing. And it was cool. I mean, friends of mine started ordering mugs. It was a strange kind of, everybody thought that Cuomo was just going to waltz to the Democratic primary, and suddenly he had this challenger who was catching him in the polls. Nobody quite expected Cuomo to lose, but then Mamdani won in June, and it was a huge upset. So he's obviously this brilliant performer, brilliant on social media. Can he govern New York? I think that's the big question that a lot of people still have about him, even though he's leading in the polls. New York's a really hard city to govern. I actually interviewed Bernie Sanders, his hero, a couple of weeks ago, and Sanders said that he hesitated initially with Mamdani because he said, can he govern New York? He said, I actually wonder if it's even possible to govern a big city in the age of Trump. The problems are so overwhelming. It's so hard. All of those are still questions that hang over Mamdani. Can he run New York if he gets the job?
Will, we're talking about the race to become New York City mayor. The election's tomorrow. It's something of a foregone conclusion because we have Zohran Mamdani, who we've been discussing, who is the Democratic candidate. It is a largely Democrat city. He's way ahead in the polls. You were just talking a moment ago about the difficulty of the job and how Bernie Sanders, the senator, was saying to you about Mamdani, about how it's just such a difficult job. What is the job of New York City mayor? I mean, what are they actually in charge of?
They are in charge of the city agencies, so they're in charge of schools, of the police department, and then, they oversee the city council that makes legislation, and they also have sort of control over the subways and there's a Department of Transportation. It gets tricky where, the state has some sort of say and veto power over some of that power. And so how you relate to the governor of New York also becomes a sort of question for the mayor as well.
How likely do you think it is that once in office he'll actually be able to do some of the things that he's said he'll do? Because they seem quite steep, as you say, lots of free childcare, free buses, rent freezers, sort of expensive stuff.
I think a lot will depend on Governor Kathy Hochul and how much she is prepared to cooperate with him and help him. And I mean, the other thing, I suppose, also, of course, is President Trump and how much he just tries to throw a spanner in the wheels. President Trump initially seemed to be trying to stop Mamdani.
I'm not going to send a lot of money to New York. I don't have to. The money comes all through the White House. And if they're going to be sending us stupid policies, communist policies, which is proven for thousands of years doesn't work. We don't have to prove it again. We're not going to ruin one of our great cities.
Then it seems he's slightly pivoted to, actually, this will be a good foil for me to run against, and to sort of say, look what happens when you leave a socialist in charge of our beloved big city. So, I think the question about whether or not he can govern is a big one. He has some past positions on things like, defund the police, which he's sort of very much rode back.
No matter how many pieces of literature you get sent, I'm not defunding the police. I'm actually working with the police to create public safety by ensuring they can do their jobs, focus on serious crimes, and creating a Department of Community Safety that'll focus on mental health, homelessness.
And there was also this sort of sense that, all the millionaires and billionaires were all going to flee the city if he came in. He's sort of done a bit to try to speak to business leaders and to try to kind of show that he's a reasonable fellow and that he knows how the city works. Can he govern the city is really an open question, though, because he hasn't been in charge of anything like this before.
But also some Democrats who are a bit unsure about him as well, even New York Democrats.
Of course, Bernie Sanders has endorsed him and other Democrats have, but the leadership in Washington has been very cautious about him.
But do they not think that there are maybe some lessons to learn from the way he's done his campaign, and that actually maybe a sort of steady she goes 70 or 80-year-old that the Democratic Party seems to be relying on quite a lot is maybe not the way forward?
I think there are a lot of Democrats looking at it saying, well, maybe this is the future. And also maybe we need somebody who can sort of counter Trump on social media and be as good at him as he is at sort of putting out his message. And obviously Mamdani famously, started his campaign by going and talking to Trump voters. I think on the humour side of things, there was a video last week that Mamdani put out, or the week before last, in which he sort of talked about how a lot of people had criticised him for being only 33.
Good morning. I know some of you have expressed concerns about my age. You're worried about a 33-year-old becoming mayor of New York City. And I want you to know I hear you.
And he said, well, this weekend, I'm turning 34.
That's why this weekend I'll be making a change. I'm turning 34, and I'm committing that for every single day from here on out, I will grow older. It's not something I ever wanted to do, but I know it matters to you, so I am.
And it was just this brilliant, very funny way of neutralizing the age attacks on him. And I think humor has been one of his huge assets.
Finally, though, Will, even though him and Trump have got lots of common, even just on that front, they are set up to clash if, as expected, Mamdani does win. How do you think the clash will play out? I mean, depending on who you listen to, there are some quite doomsday predictions about, the military moving into New York and it being starved of money. I mean, what is actually likely to happen in this clash?
Trump has already sort of taken away funding for things and tried to claw back previously agreed federal funding for the city. So there are all kinds of transport projects that rely on federal funding that he can just attempt to stop, and I'm sure will do. And then, of course, there's the idea of sending in the National Guard, which he has done in other cities, and claiming that his beloved New York is now a sort of crime-ridden hellscape. Trump is someone who will sort of say this quite confidently, whether or not it's true. And that does raise a rather dark prospect of, soldiers coming into New York City and then in turn becoming a lightning rod for protests against them. And so I think, you assume that if Mamdani wins, Trump will seek to use his record in New York against him and will seek to say, look, here's this sort of pie-in-the-sky liberal and the city's gone downhill under his leadership, and that's why Democrats shouldn't be in charge of anything.
That was The Times' New York correspondent, Will Pavia. That is it from us. Thanks for your company today. Today's producer was Olivia Case, with the help of Sophie McNulty and Alula Hart. The executive producer was Taryn Siegel, and sound design and theme composition was by Mauro Seto. I'm Luke Jones. See you soon.